Okay. Call the meeting to order. Sonia, will you take roll call?
Commissioner Wire.
Here.
Commissioner Thill.
Here.
Commissioner Waldner.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Mayor Denner.
Here. We have the agenda in front of us. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I'll give it to Mike.
Any further comments or discussion on the agenda? Not hearing any. Sonia, will you take roll call?
Commissioner Thill.
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner.
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Wire.
Aye.
Mayor Denner.
Aye. We have nothing under appearances, acknowledgement. We'll go down in consent calendar. The only change I have on, we made a motion to adopt the 2018 fire codes except for sprinkling the houses. That did not get in our minutes. Can we add that? And with that change, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move.
Second.
Any other comments or discussion? Not hearing any. Sonia, will you take roll call?
Commissioner Waldner.
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Wire.
Aye.
Commissioner Thill.
Aye.
Mayor Denner.
Aye. We have nothing under unfinished business. We'll move down into the new business. I see we got Jake on the Zoom here. You want to bring us up to speed on the item number 1, authorize the mayor to sign agreement for Madison Municipal Airport Midwest Wildlife Service LLC Wildlife Management Consultant Agreement.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So, yes, how this came about is out on the airport. Right now, strictly what's being grown is alfalfa. Part of that came in 2014 when the airport and city completed a wildlife hazard management plan that abided by FAA standards. And basically, at that time, the airfield was being cropped, and with cropping, there's known wildlife attractants and hazards to cropping. So the FAA did agree to allow the airport to transition to growing alfalfa for some time. They don't give a specific time limit or anything like that, but what's been reported basically from the airport board is that alfalfa is starting to not produce as well, and it needs a crop rotation, which is pretty standard in the farming industry. So the long story short is we're trying to establish a way for them to do a single year of a crop rotation that the FAA will accept. Within their wildlife hazard management plan that's currently in place since 2014, there is no specific language in there to allow for anything like that. And basically it says once the use of alfalfa is done, useful alfalfa is done, then you have to transition into grasses, which obviously kills the revenue stream there. So what this consulting services agreement would do is Mr. Tim Pugh runs the Midwest Wildlife Services LLC. He works with airports and the FAA a lot, so he's kind of a specialist in these things. So what he would be looking to do is write up an opinion letter, basically saying how the airport could manage a single year crop rotation to return back to producible alfalfa after that, and how they could do that while mitigating any wildlife hazard risks that would be associated with it. So basically what's been chatted about at the board level, the airport board level, is that this is worth a shot to pursue with the FAA because the loss in revenue from not being able to produce alfalfa is concerning, to say the least, for the airport. So that's kind of the initial rundown on exactly what this is. I guess I can open it up for questions on that, but basically what this would do is allow Tim to create that letter for the FAA. We would submit it up to the FAA food chain and see if we could get any type of a temporary one-year crop rotation allowed.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Do I have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement for Madison Municipal Airport Midwest Wildlife Service LLC Wildlife Management Consultant Agreement?
So move.
Second.
Is there any comments or discussion?
Yes, I have a couple of
Okay.
questions. What, Jake, do you know what they will replace with? Do we have any idea?
So that would probably come from Tim's report. I know that there was a little bit of talk on a few different crops, but basically he was going to do some research on it and then consult with us as he was developing his letter.
Okay.
I know, some other airports do soybeans. I highly doubt anything like corn would be approved, but I could see maybe a bean or something potentially being a recommendation. But Tim would basically said he's going to work through that in his report.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments, discussion? And just to let everybody know, the project to do this is $800.
For the light, the rating of the budget,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's, yep.
What does the revenue go towards when we harvest the alfalfa? Do we know that? Does it go back to the airport?
Airport.
Okay. That's good.
And I'm assuming this is for 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, discussion? Not hearing any. Sonia, will you take roll call vote?
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Wire,
Aye.
Commissioner Phil,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner,
Aye.
Mayor Denner.
Aye. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Item number 2. Mr. Lawrence, you want to fill us in on this? PowerPoint to provide direction to staff regarding 2021 opening of the Madison Aquatic Center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. I have in front of you a PowerPoint to let please.
Can you see that?
Yep, very good.
Perfect.
All right. This is for the aquatic center, which is the outdoor pool and slide. And we're going to have a discussion about what has happened, what occurred in the offing last year while we weren't running the pool, and kind of the process we're in right now, evaluating the total extent of damage and what it's going to take to repair the pool. As you can see in the picture there, the green that's vertical there, that's copper. Those are the big copper pipes that come and feed to and from the heater, the pool heater. And you can see the green corrosion on there. If you look just behind it, there's a kind of orangish or brown, that's the steel gas line coming in, the iron pipe gas line coming into the boiler that heats the pool. And that gives you an idea of just kind of the tip of the iceberg, if you will, on the corrosion that exists there. Late last fall, the heater quit, and one of my guys went down there to fixed the heater, got it running, it quit about 2 minutes later, and in that process it spit out a whole bunch of rust and corrosion, and then got them looking around, and they determined that there was something causing tremendous amount of corrosion inside the building. So they did a little bit of searching around and found that there was a fan that had quit working at some point in time, don't know when, and they fixed the fan and evacuated the building as far as the air, had all the doors open, got all the air out of there, swapped around, and went back to, trying to get some heat in there, so they brought in some temporary heaters and got that done. Go to the next slide. The issue then became trying to figure out what all was damaged. And as you can see, this is a picture of one of the electrical panels. There's fuzzy, white stuff on all the aluminum. There's the green on the copper, and anything that's steel is rusted. Like a heavy oxidation. And you can't really tell what all is bad because there's a lot of stuff hidden behind different things, and there's connections, and you really don't know the quality of the bolted connections or anything until you take them apart. And we don't know what's the condition of the breakers. Breakers are semi-sealed, but they're not sealed. You know, so depending on, you know, the concentration, the air movement inside the panel, it's really hard to know. But anytime you have a poor connection in electrical, you create heat. And if you have a really poor connection and a high load, then you can create fire. So that's something that was a concern to us, was the connections and how good quality the connections are inside the pool. This slide is a picture of the 480, 277 480 panel and the bus bars inside there. Those are all heavy copper, and everything is bolted to that. And all those bolted connections have to be disassembled. Everything has to be disassembled to clean it. And at some point in time, the cost to do all this cleaning is going to exceed the cost of just replacing everything. And then we'll have, you know, a better chance of having, you know, brand new components, brand new connections, that type of stuff. The difference is going to be possibly the time. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. But every connection, no matter which way we do it, every connection's got to be remade in the whole building. Because the copper wires are corroded. Everything inside the jackets appears to be good, but the ends where it's making a connection to the circuit breakers, all of that is corroded.
Brad, who's made that assessment?
We hired PE Group, and they came in, the electrical engineer, and they provided us with opinion, looking at it, stating that we needed to make, you know, basically replace everything was his recommendation.
Was that done in conjunction with our insurer?
The insurance company came with their own people. They were looking into the possibility of doing a repair and doing some in situ with dry ice, sandblasting, so to speak, with dry ice, blasting it, clean it up, and then remaking the connections. In that case, you have to take everything loose as if you were replacing it, pull the panels completely apart, including the bus bars and everything, and sandblast or soda blast, or not soda blast, but dry ice blast it, and then put everything back together and hope we could find breakers to go back in that old panel. So they were investigating that. As I was saying, I think the cost of that is going to be, just in the labor alone, will rival the cost of replacing everything. And then we'd have new stuff versus old stuff. So we're having a discussion with the insurance company on what's the best path to go forward for the city of Madison, because if we move forward with doing a remedial repair, then the city of Madison takes on the risk that there's no hidden damage, and that hidden damage won't cause further disruptions in service or further damage to something else, or risk to physical, you know, shock or things like that.
Do we have mechanical breakdown coverage if that happens?
We do.
So if we get a Band-Aid and not the fix that you want, we would still have insurance claims later under equipment breakdown?
That I don't know for sure. We'd have to research that.
You know, I've got a little background on this today, and
Okay.
was debriefed a little bit. Are the experts talking to each other? Are the people that we brought in talking to the people that the insurer brought in?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Not at this time. So. You know, the basis of any good electric system are the grounds. Everything has to have the same reference. You have to have a zero reference, which we usually use as the earth. So one part of the panel is connected to a ground, which is connected to the earth. And we assume that the earth is all the same electrical value throughout everywhere. If you don't have a good reference to that, then you have to run the risk of that your control devices don't work, because they don't have a voltage reference to go off. This is a ground here, this is a set of grounds here. I'm not sure I trust myself in my life, or anybody that I care about, to the grounds that are shown there without having those completely replaced, or at least some reassurance that that's going to be functional in the case that you need to have some sort of an interrupt. This is a picture of the inside of the panel, and if you look at that, you can see the steel that's all rusted. You can see the copper that's corroded, and you got the steel and the copper kind of bolted together in there. Again, I don't know how far this corrosion goes. There's places that we can't see. As we disassemble pieces or do something, we may find more of it. But everything that we can see is corroded, and everything is needing some sort of cleanup and reconnection made. Next slide. This discussing this with the mayor and others, you know, we talked about some options early on, and as we started talking about options, we came to the conclusion that because of the risk, because of the fact that water and electricity don't mix, that there was really only one option, and that was to follow the engineer's recommendation, work through and replace the components, and bring them back up to new spec, and that's the recommendation that we're bringing forward tonight for the fix on the pool. And, you know, you can't take an exception on safety. And if it wasn't, in the military we had, if you had, one of the possible outcomes of any event was the loss of life, you absolutely positively had to mitigate against that. You had to do something positive against that. You can't sidestep the possible risk of life, and that's what we're talking about here. If you've got water, 480 volt power and water.
Brad, our insurer hasn't said no to this plan, but they haven't said yes.
That's correct. Now, there's two insurers. So we have, our general insurance is South Dakota Public Insurance Alliance. Then the mechanical and electrical is through Travelers Insurance. And so there's a separate policy rider for the mechanical electrical. So we're dealing with SDPAA primarily. They are then communicating with Travelers. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I've pretty much told them that, you know, we would have to have a very frank discussion about risk. Who's going to take the risk if we don't do a full replacement, both financially and from the safety aspect? Because the city doesn't want to put itself out there. Obviously, it's the same insurance company, so they wouldn't want to put themselves out there, I would think. And so we had to have that discussion, but also 5 years from now, if we do the remedial and not the full fix, who's going to pay for it 3-4 years down the road if we have a failure and we have to replace a bunch of it? So those are the things that I told them we were going to have a frank discussion about that with this group here, and you know, represent the citizens of Madison both financially and physically, you know, for the risk that's out there.
But the insurer hasn't valued the claim. They haven't said we're going to pay X or we're going to do Y, or we don't have those answers yet.
Yeah, they're investigating the options, just like we are. You know, when they brought up, like say, the sandblaster was a guy that does painting and does this dry ice, and they use it a lot for like mold and a lot of other types of things where you've got materials that are softer that you don't want to destroy in the process, and then of course the dry ice just evaporates. It doesn't. I mean, there's no moisture, there's no nothing. It's frozen carbon dioxide, so it just those gases off, and you don't have anything other than what you stripped off of when you were blasted.
I'm going to tell the commission something it may not like to hear, but it needs to know. If you move forward with repairs before these claims are settled with the insurer, you may waive any and all rights that you had to have the insurer pay $1. And the last thing that this commission wants to hear is this is going to take longer, and that God only knows if and when this pool's going to open. But we need to get some conclusion from the insurer before, in my opinion, the commission can take any real action out there in terms of removal, repair, replace, any of that. I would not authorize until the insurer has determined what it is they're going to do. If you don't like their answer, maybe they can do that part and the city can do more, because Brad's making some great points about safety. I don't disagree with any of it. But maybe it becomes a joint effort. Maybe the insurer does a set amount, a set dollar amount, certain specific tasks, and maybe the city goes above and beyond that at their own cost. But to jump in before the insurance company has said, this is the value of the claim, this is what we're willing to do, you could waive those rights. So as fast as we want to move on this pool, don't get ahead of yourselves. Is probably the best advice I can give you.
And the final slide is the recommendations, and the recommendation that I'm going to bring forward to the commission for them to consider is that we work with the insurance company, but that our goal is to get a complete rebuild of the electrical system, bring it back up to current, operational specification, that there's as good as we can get it. Then there's no doubt in anybody's mind, if something does happen, we did everything we could to keep it from happening. And that's what we got to do. I don't see any option of that, again, going back to the safety. There's just no option. The second thing is that there is an opportunity here when we rebuild this, that we can reconfigure the motor controllers and put in all three motor controllers as VFDs. Currently, we have three motors. One of them is being run off of VFD, the other two are being run off soft starts. The two that are on soft starts have valves on them, and so they run the motors at 100% operational capacity, and then they take these butterfly valves and they throttle them down quite a bit, and puts a lot of pressure on the motor, more wear and tear in the motor, and we're consuming a lot of extra electricity. Over the course of the life of that motor, we would probably pay for the VFDs and then some with the wear and tear plus the electricity that's saving. So that's the recommendation number 2.
What's a VFD, Brad?
That's a variable frequency drive.
Okay.
So instead of running at, like on a 3-phase motor, 180 hertz, you pull it back down to 100 hertz or something like that, and then the motor runs a little bit slower.
Sure.
All of these motors are inverter duty, which is what you need for variable frequency drives to operate. And so we would recommend that that would be one change from what's there. Arguably, it's going to be cheaper than replacing what's there, because everything that we've looked at so far, partially because it was General Electric components. General Electric was bought out by ABB and is no longer making the same components exactly. And this is an older installation, about 12 years, 13 years.
Going on 15. It should be paid off, what,
The next year or so?
next year?
Yeah.
So, and
I think it's 13 or 14 years. It's in that range, but all those components are no longer the current model. So the only way you can find them is to find used components or try to find some new old stock. And we've been looking to see if we can find new old stock and just replace the guts of the circuit breakers with brand new pieces, but they would leave the box in place so that it would really reduce the amount of time it takes to do it. But so far we haven't found any new old stock components to put in there. So that's the problem, is that they've become obsolete. And that goes for the motor controllers, that goes for the circuit boards, the circuit breakers, everything. So, and they did already come back, and mechanical for the insurance company said that they wanted to replace the heater for the pool, and that was something they said you can go ahead and start looking at that. I haven't done anything other than just kind of get an idea of what they cost, and that's where I stopped. I haven't moved forward with anything. We would have to go to bids on that, because right now we don't know the full extent of the cost of this. So if we were to do that separate, once we get some sort of an agreement with the insurance company, that's a separate component that would have to be done on bids, because if we exceed $100,000 on this overall project, which there's a good chance that could happen, that we'd have to go to bids. So even if we do separate components, we'll have to go to bids on those. The last bullet point here is that there is a lot more damage than just the electric. Every single metal surface, with the exception of galvanized, for whatever reason, galvanized came through this in flying colors. The stainless steel, the chrome, the aluminum, and the copper are all pitted, rusted. Just, it's hard to imagine until you walk through the place that just everything is damaged. The bar trusses that hold up the roof, all the bottoms of the bar trusses are rusted. So we really need to have those blasted and recoated so that we can stop the damage. And these are just the first steps. I think, the problem with this is that the reason this happened was a bad design. The building had a bad design. It should never had the chemicals with air communication to the main room. In any pool I've ever seen, the chemicals have their own door that goes to the outside. If you need to get heat from the main room, you bring it in, but you have shutters there, so if the evacuation system quits, it closes down, and that you can't get communication with the air, and you don't get that. This design was, I think, compromised, in my humble opinion, to make the pool house look better and try to hide the vents and everything. And in that process, they created a situation where when one fan quit, when one of the blowers quit, instead of pushing the air out, it allowed the air in and brought that air into the room that they were trying to evacuate and pushed all that air out into the main room, which in this case contained the acid that did all the corrosion. And then it got sucked out through the other fan that was still working. And so if it had shutters on the outside of the building that wouldn't allow that to come back in, we would have been in better shape, but they didn't have that either. So at the end of the day, the design of the building was such that if one fan quit working, the other one, it became a supply air for the fan that was still working. And so in order to fix this, in my humble opinion, and to make it safer and not have this happen again, as we would reconfigure the chemical rooms, we'd seal them completely up so that They don't have any communication with the inside of the building with the exception of the shuttered, louvered, air supply. We put a direct vent fan going to the outside and we have doors going to the outside, so there's no way that the air could exchange with the inside of the pump house. And that's what has to happen. And unfortunately, that wasn't done, and I think that was done because the way it was done so it would look better. So this is part of solving the problem. The bigger part is going to be reconfiguring the building at some point. Are there any questions of me at this point? I wish I had better news. This is a sucker punch. COVID was bad enough.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
You bet.
Is there anybody else would like to speak? Come on up.
I'm Val Parsley, and I had called Marshall earlier and told him that as a citizen, I hope the pool gets open. And I realize it's a huge expense. But I also feel like it is really crucial that we have the pool open again. And if it costs extra money, I guess as a taxpayer, I'm willing to pay a little bit more. Practically everyone I've talked to wants the swimming pool. One summer without it was pretty sad. I remember the summer it was being built and how lost kids were. They just kind of roamed the streets. It's a wonderful place for people to go. I see a lot of grandmothers like myself who go there with their grandkids. So just as a citizen, I encourage you to do what you have to do. And if it's expensive, it's expensive. That's just the way it is. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
So your suggestion, Mr. Jenks, is wait till we hear from the insurance company.
Well, I think we've got to apply some real pressure.
Right,
Insurance companies are never in a hurry
right.
it's their business model. So we need to get this claim settled and adjusted with some permissions from our insurer to Brad or whoever it is to start being able to buy things, repair things, and do that. But we can't sit back. We'll hear from that insurer in June. That's the way that they go. So it's going to take some consistent inquiries and pressure. I'm not using pressure in the bad way. It's just something that has to be followed up on weekly to get these claims settled.
Yeah, I guess from my stance, I'm not in favor of putting a Band-Aid on it. I would prefer that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
Agreed.
I guess my one question I have is who's liable if we take the easy way out of this and something happens? Does the city become liable, or do we as commissioners become liable?
If you don't repair it fully,
Yeah.
the city could. The city always could face potential liability claims.
And
Those aren't individual claims against you commissioners, but there's potential city liability there. And Brad makes outstanding points about safety. It's just that, as Ms. Parsley's noted, and as we all know, this is going to be expensive.
It's going to be expensive.
And we need our insurance. This is why we have insurance,
Yeah.
right? That's why we have insurance. So we've got to figure out what our insurer will do, so then you all can determine really what the quote city bill
Yeah.
is here.
Yeah, I want the pool open just like everybody else does, and I completely agree with you because I deal with the kids day in and day out, and I do know that pool is vitally important, but I absolutely will not open that pool if there's any, in my opinion, any issue where we could have harm to those kids. So,
I do want to make note that when I first got involved in this, that I went and hired the electrical engineer. I brought him here to you guys, you approved it, and we hired the electrical engineer right away. As soon as we hired that electrical engineer and our insurance company found out about it, they became much, much more aggressive, and they became a player in this. So that was the perfect thing to do. It was the right thing to do. And as long as we have his report saying it needs to be replaced, I think we've got all the cards that we need, and the damage is easily documented. So I think that's something that we need to use and move that forward. So this is what we have for what we want to do, and just keep pushing it. So
I have a question for you, Brad. On breakers, you said used ones and new ones. How will the new and the used work together? How do you know that the used ones hasn't been cleaned and
We weren't gonna use any used ones, other than, if we got them from another source. So like, let's say we bought some off of eBay that weren't associated with that, but then that is a question, do they function right? And you'd have to test them all, and that's a concern. And that's why the new is so much better. And that was why the original plan was to find a new circuit breaker in a box at some warehouse that somebody hadn't put in yet that would match the one we had. We could take all that out. Now, the bigger point to this that you brought up, and I forgot to mention earlier too, is right now, if you wanted to buy a circuit breaker, a brand new one, of just about any brand, they're not easily had. And that's one of the things I should have made mention to too, is that we can maybe come up with a fairly quick settlement with the insurance company. We may not be able to get the parts to rebuild it soon, because right now circuit breakers are in short supply nationwide. And so I don't know, I don't wanna make this seem like this just the insurance company, that's our hurdle. The other hurdle is getting supplies. Even if we went with brand new and top shelf, whatever it is, VFDs, whatever, we may not be able to get the components in a timely manner right now. Just kinda like you see it with the cars and all, lumber or different things, the prices are going up and the supply is going down, so.
Well, Brad makes a wonderful point. There's many hurdles here.
Right.
I mean, it shouldn't be reported in the paper or the radio that we've just got one hurdle with the insurance company.
Right.
We got a lot of hurdles here.
Right.
It's just that if we're taking this piece by piece, I think one of the next and biggest steps is we need to have this claim adjusted and settled by the insurance company. And I would propose that the next steps are, the mayor, Brad, and I maybe need to sit down at my office and we'll talk about who's going to do what in that regard. I think that's the very next steps we can take. Brad should certainly be looking into other equipment issues and things that the mayor and I don't understand and don't know, because there are other hurdles. But I think that's maybe the first hurdle that we get together in the next day or two and talk about that.
And I think as a commission, we need to be completely transparent as we go through this, that we have always said we will do what we can to get the pool open, but if we can't get things, there's nothing we can do about that, unfortunately. But I also am in agreement that it needs to be fixed correctly, and we need to do it right. And I know it's not gonna be great if it doesn't get open, but it will know moving forward, in my opinion, that it's been fixed appropriately, and we do everything that needs to be done the right way.
But the plan I was gonna propose is that we would fix the electrical and mechanical systems so that they're 100%. We would wait until after the season was over to fix the chemical room issue. And do that as a separate project. Because that's gonna require cutting into the building and putting new doors in and putting in new ventilation and some of that stuff. So that would be a separate piece. I don't know how much that would be covered by the insurance. That's something we'll have to work with on, because obviously the design and the failure in that design is what caused the problem. So I think that they would be keen to have that fixed. I don't know if they'd be keen to pay for all of it. So that's something we'll have to work with them.
And I don't disagree with Val. I'd rather have, this is gonna be, it's 15 years old or 14 years old. We're gonna fix it, let's fix it right, so it's gonna last another 20 years. And if that costs the city more money, that's what we're gonna have to do, so.
And late is better than never.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm like Adam, I want it fixed the right way and the safest way, and if it costs us twice as much as what it should, well, I'm sorry, it's something that we gotta look at.
David, do I have to ask for a motion to table this till we hear from the insurance, or
No,
we're good?
this was simply discussion.
Discussion?
There's no motion needed.
Okay, and then Brad and I will get with you so we can
Yes.
at least get the insurance company. We can get the insurance company
Exactly.
taken care of, and we get our some or all the money, and then we can move on to what parts. Okay,
Brad, thank you for all the
Yes.
hard work
Thank
you
you.
put into
Yep.
this. I know this has been a process, so thank you for that very much.
There was a lot of the footwork was done by Lori.
Yeah.
And had a lot of the stuff, she got into initial contact with the insurance companies and all that stuff. but things had kind of stagnated there because they were saying they weren't gonna cover anything. And so then we got our engineer in there to see what we needed to do, and that's, or I think that really kind of caused the insurance company to take a step back, say, oh, we better step up and start being part of the process, so.
I guess I have one more question, and when we're done, and before we're done, if and when we get this up and running, are we storing these chemicals somewhere else until we get this taken care of? Do we have a remote location so we don't have all these chemicals sitting up there again?
Well, the issue wasn't storage of it.
It wasn't the
necessarily.
storage.
They're not there now, we
Okay.
removed them.
Yep.
But they have to be there for the operation of the pool.
Okay.
And so we've talked about having some way of putting streamers on the outside vents.
Sure.
You can tell if the vent's working.
Okay.
There's no, you can't tell when, and with one of them running, you
Yep.
can't tell because the noise is the same as if both of them are running.
Okay.
And so without some sort of a streamer or something on the outside vents showing that there's air coming out, there's really no way to know
Okay.
that the vents are working. And so what happened was one quit, one kept running, and of course the pool not being open last year, nobody noticed it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long, it could have happened the winter before, and we just never noticed it because nobody was in there practically for a full year.
It's not normal to have that much chemical.
Right, when that was,
On
I,
hand.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't have it happen again once we get it fixed.
And that's where if we isolate it and all that stuff, but yeah, there should, we've had that discussion already from an operational standpoint that we probably need to remove some of the material that was
Okay.
stored in there and some of that stuff, so we've got other areas where we can store that stuff and it shouldn't be a problem.
Just a little history I got from Lori
Yeah.
was the lady that took care of it before Lori would send the chemicals back during the winter, so we didn't have them.
Gotcha.
And we changed chemical companies and they wouldn't take back. But we have this pool up here that uses some of the same chemicals. You can just take it up and let them use it up there. I mean, so yeah, I would just prefer over the winter not even to store any chemicals in there while it's not running.
Yep.
Then we would be for sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
We'll go into public comment. We have Mike Johnson.
Thanks, Commission. Mike Johnson here. Thanks for getting the project going on North Union. There's a couple concerns that I have. Number one, at the north end of that street, from the east side to the west side, there's a 24-inch difference in elevation. I've expressed my concern to the city engineer, and he says they're not going to, first of all, you're not going to replace the curb, which is totally ridiculous because the last time this street was paved was 46 years ago. So that's going to make your curb and gutter, by the time you redo the street again, almost 100 years old. So there's no sense to not replace the curb and gutter at the same time that you're doing, in my opinion, that you're doing the asphalt street. But at the same time, keeping a 24-inch difference when the water doesn't stay in the curb on the east side, runs across to the west side, and runs through property that I own. Now, we can drop the east side 12 inches, raise the west side 12 inches, get pretty close, we can put a storm sewer in, a catch basin, something. Well, you're going to this expense. I plan to build another set of condos up there. I don't want water sitting in front of the $600,000-700,000 units. It's easy to fix now rather than after you've spent the hundreds of thousands of dollars putting sewer and water and asphalt and not addressing the problem that exists. So that's my complaint. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the other one was Val and you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there any announcements?
Well, thanks to Mike who came up and trimmed the tree at the school for us. We appreciate that. It was a hanging branch, and I had said something to Marshall, and he was there the next day taking it out for us, so thank you.
Not seeing any executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Have a nice evening.
Have we ever not done the curb?
Yeah, thank you, David.